Pause for a moment before you scroll. This is not a loud message. It is not rushed, and it is not here to excite you for no reason. But if you have felt financial pressure sitting quietly in your life, not exploding, not dramatic, just constantly present, then this phase is meant to stop you right here. Because the most dangerous financial shifts do not announce themselves. They begin silently, and the most powerful breakthroughs often arrive the same way. Right now, many people are exhausted from trying, working harder, planning more, waiting longer, and still feeling like nothing is moving. But here is what most do not realize. When a system stops responding to effort, it is not punishment. It is preparation for redirection. This is the moment where the old financial pattern reaches its limit, where struggle no longer produces progress, where repeating the same actions stops making sense. And that is exactly where opportunity begins to reposition itself. Not through luck, not through fantasy, but through timing, awareness, and alignment. Think carefully about the last few weeks of your life. Did something delay unexpectedly? Did a plan slow down instead of speeding up? Did money concerns feel heavier even though you were doing everything right? That is not coincidence. Pressure increases just before a system changes direction. Not to break you, but to force your attention to shift. This phase is not about sudden wealth. It is about sudden movement. Movement of ideas, movement of access, movement of decisions, movement of people entering or exiting your financial environment. This is where gates open, not because you push them, but because the timing finally aligns. And here is the part most people miss. Financial shifts rarely begin with money. They begin with clarity. Clarity about what is draining you. Clarity about what is no longer sustainable. Clarity about where effort is being wasted. That clarity is forming now. You may feel restless, questioning old plans, reevaluating commitments, reconsidering risks you once avoided. That is not fear. That is readiness. And readiness is dangerous in the best possible way, because it no longer accepts limitation as permanent. This is why this moment matters. Not because something magical happens overnight, but because your relationship with opportunity is changing. And once that shifts, outcomes follow. If this message feels like it is describing your current season, stay connected. Subscribe so you do not miss the next phase, where we break down how opportunity recognizes readiness before results appear. Share this with someone who has been carrying financial pressure silently. Before you move on, comment the word open, not as a request, but as a declaration to yourself that you are no longer closed to redirection, new access, or unexpected opportunity. Typing this word matters because it marks a mental shift from endurance to awareness, from pressure to preparation. Then type 1 for the next part, because the next phase explains how sudden financial shifts begin forming long before money ever shows up, and how to recognize the signs early. Phase 2, how financial shifts form invisibly before money ever arrives. Stay with this carefully. This phase is not loud, but it is decisive. Most people believe money appears when effort increases. More work, more struggle, more pressure. But real financial shifts do not begin with income. They begin with repositioning. And repositioning is subtle. Right now, something important is happening beneath the surface of your life. Not externally obvious, not dramatic, but deeply structural. You may feel it as uncertainty, as impatience, as the sense that something has to change, even if you can't explain what. That feeling is not random. Before any major financial upgrade, 3 things quietly happen. First, access begins to move. Second, timing recalibrates. Third, resistance exposes itself. Let's break this down clearly. Access begins to move when information, people, or ideas start entering your awareness that were not there before. You may overhear something. Notice an opportunity you would have ignored earlier. Reconnect with someone unexpectedly. Feel drawn to learn or explore a new direction. This is not coincidence. Access always moves before money does. Timing recalibrates when delays appear. Plans pause. Progress slows. Old paths feel blocked. This frustrates people, but this is critical. When timing shifts, it is not to stop you. It is to realign you with a window that actually leads somewhere. Rushing during recalibration causes people to miss their opening. And resistance exposes itself when fear surfaces. Fear of risk, fear of change, fear of stepping into something unfamiliar. This is where many turn back. But resistance appearing does not mean danger. It means proximity. Fear becomes loud when a threshold is near. That is why this phase feels uncomfortable. Your old financial identity, the version of you that learned to survive, endure, and settle, is being challenged, and it does not let go quietly. This is why you may notice internal conflict right now. Part of you wants stability. Another part wants expansion. This conflict is not confusion. It is transition. And here is the most important truth of this phase. Money does not reward desperation. It responds to positioning. Positioning is created when you stop forcing outcomes and start recognizing alignment. Right now, you're being positioned, not for random wealth, but for a shift that matches who you are becoming, not who you were. This is why comparisons feel heavier lately, why old goals feel smaller, why tolerance for financial stress is disappearing. You are outgrowing an old ceiling, and ceilings always feel uncomfortable before they break. This phase is asking only one thing from you: awareness without panic. If this message feels precise rather than dramatic, that is intentional, because real financial change is quiet before it is visible. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we reveal how sudden financial openings often come through people and decisions, not luck. Share this with someone who feels stuck but senses something shifting underneath. Before moving forward, comment the word position, not because it creates money, but because it grounds your awareness in where change actually begins. Typing this word reminds you that you are not waiting. You are being placed. Then type 2 for the next part, because the next phase explains how the right connections and decisions appear at the exact moment resistance fades. Phase 3, how people, decisions, and timing align at the exact turning point. This phase is where most financial shifts quietly lock into place. Not through miracles, not through promises, but through convergence. Here is something few people are ever taught. Money does not move alone. It moves through people, decisions, and timing together. When those three align, outcomes change rapidly. When even one is missing, progress stalls. Right now, convergence is forming around you. You may not see it clearly yet, but you can feel it. A sense that certain conversations matter more than before. A feeling that some decisions carry unusual weight. An awareness that saying yes or no now could redirect months or years. That awareness is not anxiety. It is precision. This is what happens just before access expands. Let's talk about people first. Before any financial breakthrough, specific people enter or re-enter your life. Sometimes as helpers, sometimes as mirrors, sometimes as obstacles that reveal what no longer fits. You might reconnect with someone unexpectedly. You might notice a person suddenly taking interest in your ideas. Or you might feel distance grow between you and someone who once influenced your decisions. This is not coincidence. Financial shifts require clean channels. Some connections strengthen. Others naturally loosen. Next comes decisions. Small choices suddenly feel significant. What you agree to, what you decline, what you delay, what you commit to. This is not pressure. It is clarity sharpening. You are being asked to decide from alignment, not fear. From long-term awareness, not short-term relief. And then there is timing. Timing is the element most people fight. They rush because they are tired. They force because they are afraid. They act because silence feels uncomfortable. But aligned timing feels different. It does not scream. It does not rush. It simply feels right quietly. When people, decisions, and timing align, movement accelerates without strain. This is why you may notice a less tolerance for distractions, less patience for draining commitments, less interest in proving yourself, because your energy is consolidating. Here is the truth most never hear. The gates people call luck open only when alignment is complete. And alignment completes when you stop chasing and start recognizing. This is not about becoming rich overnight. It is about breaking a financial pattern that no longer matches your capacity. A sudden shift does not always look dramatic at first. Sometimes it looks like one conversation, one decision, one opportunity you almost ignored. That is how systems change. If this phase feels accurate rather than exciting, that is a good sign. Accuracy precedes acceleration. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we explain why financial doors often open right after doubt peaks, and how to move without sabotaging the opening. Share this with someone who senses that the right people and choices are aligning, even if results aren't visible yet. Before moving on, comment the word align, not as a wish, but as a reminder to yourself to choose clarity over urgency when decisions appear. Typing this word matters because it anchors your awareness at the moment convergence forms. Then type 3 for the next part, because the next phase reveals why hesitation fades just before opportunity arrives, and how to recognize the exact moment to move. Phase 4. Why doubt peaks right before the financial opening appears. This phase is uncomfortable by design, and it is the one most people misunderstand. Because just before a major financial opening appears, doubt gets louder. Not because something is wrong, but because something is about to change. Here is the pattern that repeats again and again in real life. When the old system is about to release you, it makes one last attempt to pull you back into familiarity. That attempt is doubt. You may notice thoughts like, maybe I should wait. Maybe this isn't realistic. What if nothing changes? What if I miss something? These thoughts do not mean danger. They mean proximity. Doubt is not a warning sign here. It is a threshold signal. Think about it carefully. If nothing were shifting, there would be no tension. If you were truly stuck, there would be numbness, not doubt. Doubt appears when movement is near, because the mind prefers the known, even if the known is limiting. This is why many people abandon the opening seconds before it forms. They retreat to safety. They choose familiarity. They delay one more time, and the moment passes. But you're being shown this phase so that doesn't happen again. Right now, your awareness is sharper than before. You are noticing patterns. You are questioning old limits. You are sensing that something is different, even if you can't yet name it. That is not confusion. That is recalibration. Here is what usually happens at this exact point. A conversation presents an option you hadn't planned for. An opportunity feels risky, but strangely aligned. A decision requires courage, not certainty. A door appears without instructions. This is where most freeze. They wait for guarantees. They look for signs. They overanalyze. But aligned openings do not come with proof. They come with recognition. Recognition feels calm, not frantic. Clear, not dramatic. Grounded, not rushed. Fear wants certainty. Alignment only asks for honesty. Ask yourself this question slowly. If fear were not involved, what would I already know is right? That answer is closer than you think. This phase is not asking you to gamble. It is asking you to stop retreating out of habit. Because the gates people call billionaire gates do not open to desperation. They open to readiness meeting courage. And courage does not mean absence of fear. It means movement without letting fear decide. If this phase feels intense, it is because you are close, not because you are wrong. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we reveal how the right move often looks small, but changes everything. Share this with someone who keeps stopping right before breakthrough moments. Before moving forward, comment the word courage, not as motivation, but as a quiet agreement with yourself to not retreat when doubt gets loud. Typing this word matters because it separates awareness from fear at the exact moment direction matters most. Then type 4 for the next part, because the next phase explains how a single aligned action can unlock a financial shift larger than months of effort. Phase 5, how one small, aligned action unlocks a disproportionate financial shift. This phase is where everything you felt begins to translate into movement. Not explosive, not chaotic, but precise. Most people believe big financial change requires big action, a massive risk, a dramatic leap, a complete life overhaul. That belief keeps them stuck, because real financial shifts rarely begin with something big. They begin with one small action taken at the correct moment. And timing matters more than size. Right now, your life is positioned at a pressure point, a place where effort has already been spent, where awareness has already sharpened, where doubt has already surfaced. This is not the time for more preparation. This is the time for alignment. An aligned action feels different. It does not feel forced. It does not feel frantic. It does not come from panic or comparison. It feels quiet, clear, almost obvious once you see it. It might look like saying yes to a conversation you would normally avoid, saying no to an obligation that drains you, making a decision you've postponed out of fear, sharing an idea you've kept to yourself, taking a step that feels small but honest. This is why many miss their moment. They're waiting for permission, waiting for certainty, waiting for a sign loud enough to remove responsibility. But alignment does not remove responsibility. It clarifies it. Here is the truth most people never hear. When systems are ready to shift, they respond to signal, not force. That signal is your action, not any action, the right one. And the right one often feels too small to matter, which is exactly why it works. Because it bypasses ego. It bypasses fear. It bypasses overthinking. Once that signal is sent, movement accelerates. People respond differently. Timing tightens. Opportunities reveal structure. This is how sudden financial shifts happen. Not overnight wealth, but sudden access, sudden traction, sudden movement where there was none. And once movement begins, momentum follows. You may not see the full outcome immediately, but you will feel the difference. A release, a sense of forward motion, a quiet confirmation that something unlocked. That is how you know you move correctly. This phase is not asking you to rush. It is asking you to recognize the moment when hesitation is no longer protection. Protection served its purpose. Now alignment takes over. If this message feels grounded rather than dramatic, that is intentional. Because real opportunity does not scream. It waits to be recognized. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we reveal how momentum compounds rapidly after the first aligned move. Share this with someone who feels ready, but keeps waiting for the perfect moment. Before moving forward, comment the word move. Not as pressure, but as a private agreement with yourself that when clarity appears, you will not delay out of habit. Typing this word matters because it marks the transition from awareness into action. Then type 5 for the next part because the next phase explains how momentum builds faster than expected once the first correct step is taken, and how to avoid stopping it. Phase 6, how momentum builds faster than expected once the first move is made. This phase is where many people get confused, because after the first aligned action, life does not explode instantly. There is no dramatic announcement, no obvious reward. Instead, something more powerful happens. Resistance weakens. Momentum does not arrive as speed. It arrives as ease. Suddenly, things that required effort begin to cooperate. Replies come faster. Delays shorten. Clarity increases. Options appear where there were none. This is not luck. This is the system responding to alignment. Here is what most people don't understand. Momentum is not created by doing more. It is created by removing friction. The first aligned action removes internal friction. Doubt loosens. Fear loses authority. Your energy becomes consistent instead of conflicted. And consistency is magnetic. This is why, after the first move, people often notice fewer obstacles in conversations, a less pushback from others, better timing without forcing, increased confidence without arrogance. You didn't change the world. You changed your position within it. Momentum builds quietly at first, like a current beneath the surface. If you try to rush it, you disrupt it. If you doubt it, you weaken it. If you overanalyze it, you slow it. This is the discipline of this phase. Do not interfere with what is working. Most people sabotage momentum because it feels unfamiliar. They're used to struggle. They associate effort with progress. So when things begin to flow, they grow suspicious. They add pressure. They second guess. They overcorrect. And momentum stalls. Let this be clear. Momentum does not need supervision. It needs trust and consistency. This is also the phase where opportunities test your boundaries. Not all options that appear are meant to be taken. Some exist to check whether you will fall back into urgency. Aligned momentum feels steady. Rushed opportunity feels loud. Learn the difference. Steady feels grounded. Loud feels anxious. Choose steady. This phase is not about chasing more. It is about protecting the flow you've activated. Small, consistent, aligned actions now outperform big, emotional ones. Awareness matters more than speed. Presence matters more than force. This is how financial patterns truly change. Not through one event, but through a sequence that no longer leaks energy. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we explain how to recognize which opportunities strengthen momentum and which quietly drain it. Share this with someone who tends to rush right after progress begins. Before moving on, comment the word flow, not as a wish, but as a reminder to yourself to allow momentum to work without interference. Typing this word matters because it reinforces patience at the exact stage where impatience causes most people to fall back. Then type 6 for the next part because the next phase reveals how discernment protects momentum and prevents costly detours just before the bigger shift appears. Phase 7. How discernment protects momentum right before the major financial shift. This phase is quiet, but it is decisive. Because once momentum starts flowing, not every opportunity that appears is meant to be taken. This is where many people lose what they just activated. They confuse movement with alignment. They assume every open door is progress. They say yes too quickly. They chase instead of choosing. And momentum leaks. Discernment is not suspicion. It is clarity without fear. At this stage, opportunities multiply. Invitations appear. Ideas surface. People approach you with offers, suggestions, collaborations, shortcuts. Some are aligned. Some are distractions. Some are tests. Here is the truth few are told. Right before a major financial shift, distractions increase. Not to stop you, but to see if you can hold your center. Distractions look appealing. They promise speed. They promise certainty. They promise relief. But they feel slightly off. Not wrong. Just rushed. Just heavy. Just demanding more than they give. Aligned opportunities feel different. They respect your pace. They do not pressure you. They do not require you to abandon your values. They do not drain you emotionally. They feel calm, even if they are challenging. They feel clean, even if they require effort. This is the discipline of this phase. Do not decide from excitement. Decide from clarity. Excitement fades. Clarity holds. Ask yourself quietly before saying yes. Does this strengthen my momentum or scatter it? Does this feel steady or urgent? Does this align with where I am going or only with what I want to escape? Your answers will be immediate if you listen without panic. Here is why discernment matters now more than ever. Momentum amplifies whatever you attach it to. If you attach it to alignment, growth accelerates. If you attach it to fear, instability multiplies. This is not about avoiding risk. It is about avoiding misalignment disguised as opportunity. And there is one more thing. At this phase, some people or situations may naturally fall away. Conversations fade. Offers dissolve. Plans change without drama. Do not chase what exits. Do not resurrect what disconnects. When something leaves quietly, it is making space, not creating loss. This is how systems clear before expansion. If you try to hold everything, you slow down. If you trust the release, you move forward lighter. That is discernment in action. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we explain how the real financial shift locks in and becomes stable, not temporary. Share this with someone who keeps saying yes out of fear of missing out. Before moving on, comment the word clear, not as a declaration, but as a grounding reminder to choose clarity over urgency at the exact moment it matters. Typing this word helps anchor your awareness so momentum stays clean and focused. Then type 7 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how alignment turns movement into lasting financial stability instead of short-lived gains. Phase 8, how alignment turns movement into lasting financial stability. This phase is where everything becomes real. Not exciting, not dramatic, but solid. Because there is a difference between a financial spike and a financial shift. Most people experience spikes. Very few experience shifts. A spike gives relief. A shift changes structure. And what you are entering now is not temporary momentum. It is restructuring. Here is the truth that most never understand. Money becomes stable only when your decisions stop leaking energy. Earlier phases activated movement. Now this phase decides whether that movement becomes a new baseline or collapses back into cycles. This is where alignment proves its value. Aligned stability looks like this. You stop chasing quick wins. You stop making fear-based decisions. You stop reacting emotionally to short-term fluctuations. You begin thinking in systems, not moments. This is subtle, but powerful. You may notice your relationship with money changing. Not the amount yet, but the way you think about it. You become more selective, more patient, less reactive. That is not hesitation. That is maturity. Financial stability does not come from having more. It comes from losing less energy. Energy leaks through impulsive decisions, emotional spending, saying yes to misaligned opportunities, trying to prove something to others, rushing because silence feels uncomfortable. Alignment seals those leaks. And once leaks close, stability forms naturally. This is why many people fail after momentum starts. They assume speed is the goal. They assume growth must always feel intense. But sustainable growth feels boring to the unprepared mind. It feels steady, predictable, grounded. And that steadiness is what allows wealth to compound instead of reset. This phase asks for one discipline: consistency without anxiety, doing the right things repeatedly, making decisions that respect your energy, letting momentum grow roots instead of spikes. This is where billionaire systems are actually built, not through hype, but through restraint, clarity, and alignment. You may notice fewer dramatic highs, but you will also notice fewer crashes. That is stability forming, and stability is what attracts larger access, because larger systems require calm operators. Now, about the comment. Comment the word foundation, because this phase is about laying something that holds weight. Typing this word is not symbolic hype. It reinforces the idea that you are no longer chasing moments, but building structure. It grounds your mindset in long-term thinking, which is exactly what this stage requires. If this phase resonates, stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part, where we explain how this foundation begins attracting higher-level opportunities without effort. Share this with someone who keeps rising and falling financially and needs stability more than excitement. Then type 8 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how once stability forms, access expands quietly, and why the biggest opportunities arrive without noise. Phase 9. How quiet stability attracts high-level access without noise. This phase feels different from everything before it. There's less tension, less urgency, less emotional charge, and that is exactly why it works. Here is the shift that most people never recognize. High-level financial access does not respond to excitement. It responds to reliability. Once stability forms, the signal you send to the world changes. Not through words, not through appearance, but through consistency. You stop broadcasting need. You start broadcasting readiness. And readiness attracts access. This is why the biggest opportunities rarely arrive with hype. They come quietly, through private conversations, through unexpected introductions, through timing that feels almost ordinary. But ordinary is misleading, because beneath that calm surface, systems are adjusting. People begin to trust you with more responsibility. Decisions carry more weight. Opportunities have longer timelines and deeper impact. This is how higher-level access works. It does not ask, how fast can you move? It asks, how steady can you stay? At this phase, you may notice something subtle but important. You are no longer trying to impress. You are no longer trying to convince. You are no longer trying to prove worth. That effort has been replaced by presence. And presence is persuasive without pressure. This is also why some noise may fade from your life. Less drama, fewer distractions, fewer conversations that go nowhere. Not because you're withdrawing, but because your energy no longer feeds chaos. Here is the discipline of this phase. Do not chase visibility. Let credibility build. Do not rush scale. Let systems strengthen. Do not explain yourself. Let results speak quietly. This is where people make a mistake. They feel calm and assume nothing is happening. So they reintroduce urgency. They force motion. They break the rhythm. And access pauses. Let this be clear. Silence at this stage is not absence. It is consolidation. Think of it like a bridge being reinforced before heavier traffic is allowed. The pause is preparation. Your job here is simple, but not easy. Maintain steadiness. Honor timing. Protect consistency. If you do that, access expands naturally, not in bursts, but in layers. This is how financial life upgrades without collapse. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we explain how to recognize when access is testing you and how to respond without losing alignment. Share this with someone who feels uneasy when life gets quiet after progress. Before moving forward, comment the word steady. Not as motivation, but as a grounding reminder that calm is not stagnation, is strength at work. Typing this word matters because it reinforces trust in the phase most people abandon too early. Then type 9 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how to pass the access test that appears right before the biggest financial expansion locks in. Phase 10, the access test that decides whether expansion locks in or fades. This phase is rarely talked about. It decides everything. Because right before a major financial expansion becomes permanent, access tests appear. Not obstacles, not setbacks, tests. And these tests do not look like failure. They look like choice. Here is what happens at this stage. You have stability. You have momentum. You have quiet access forming. Things feel calmer, more ordered, more predictable. And then something presents itself. A proposal, a shortcut, a temptation to scale faster, an option that promises speed instead of structure, an offer that looks profitable but slightly misaligned. This is the test. The system is asking one question. Will you protect alignment, or will you trade it for speed? Most people fail here, not because they're careless, but because they are tired of waiting. They think, maybe this is the breakthrough. Maybe this is how it accelerates. Maybe I should take it before it's gone. And they say yes too fast. What they don't realize is this. High-level access always tests restraint before it grants expansion, because larger systems cannot be built on impulse. They collapse under pressure. They require calm decision makers. This is why the test feels subtle. It does not scream danger. It whispers opportunity. Aligned opportunities do not demand urgency. They allow evaluation. They respect timing. They do not punish you for saying no or asking for clarity. Misaligned opportunities rush you. They pressure you. They frame hesitation as loss. Learn this distinction now, because how you respond here determines whether what you've built stabilizes or destabilizes. Ask yourself before any major decision at this phase, does this strengthen my foundation or stress it? Does this require me to abandon consistency? Does this align with the pace that created my stability? If something requires you to break your rhythm to access it, it is not aligned. The access meant for you will match your rhythm, not disrupt it. This is the moment where patience becomes power, not passive patience. Disciplined patience. You're not waiting. You are choosing. And choosing correctly here allows expansion to lock in quietly, sustainably, and without reversal. This is where financial shifts become irreversible, not because of money, but because of decision quality. If this phase feels serious, that is intentional, because seriousness protects what hype destroys. Stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next phase, where we explain how expansion stabilizes across months and years, not just moments. Share this with someone who keeps saying yes too fast and wonders why progress resets. Before moving forward, comment the word discipline, not as restriction, but as respect for what you've built and what it can become. Typing this word grounds your awareness at the exact point where many people trade long-term expansion for short-term excitement. Then type 10 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how once this test is passed, financial growth begins compounding quietly, without stress, fear, or constant effort. Phase 11. How financial growth begins compounding quietly after the test is passed. This phase does not announce itself, and that is exactly why it lasts. Once the access test is passed, something fundamental changes in the way money interacts with your life. Not emotionally, not dramatically, structurally. This is the point where growth stops feeling like effort and starts behaving like a system. Most people think compounding is only about numbers, interest, percentages. time. But real compounding begins before numbers increase. It begins when your decisions stop undoing your progress. After the test, you may notice fewer urgent choices, fewer emotional reactions to money, more patience with outcomes, more confidence without pressure. This is not stagnation. This is stabilization turning into accumulation. Here is the hidden truth. Compounding requires boredom, not disengagement, not laziness, but emotional neutrality. When money no longer controls your mood, it starts multiplying faster. Why? Because emotional volatility creates leakage. Every panic decision, every rushed move, every fear-based adjustment resets growth. Calm compounds. Consistency compounds. Clarity compounds. This is why people who suddenly become financially stable often seem unchanged from the outside. Same habits, same routines, same pace. But internally, something critical has shifted. They are no longer interrupting progress. This phase feels like life is normal again. Work continues. Responsibilities remain. Nothing flashy happens. And that is the trap most people fall into. They assume nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, systems are reinforcing. Relationships are deepening. Trust is accumulating. Access is solidifying. This is how financial foundations become unshakable. You may also notice that fear about the future decreases. Not because everything is guaranteed, but because you trust your decision-making now. That trust is priceless. It means setbacks don't destabilize you. Fluctuations don't scare you. Silence doesn't trigger urgency. And this is when compounding accelerates. Not because you chase more, but because you stop losing ground. This phase is about staying invisible to your old patterns. Not announcing progress. Not testing limits unnecessarily. Not disrupting what is working. Quiet growth outpaces loud ambition every time. And here is the most important insight of this phase. When growth compounds correctly, it no longer feels like growth. It feels like life catching up to your alignment. Now, the word for this phase is simple. Comment the word build, not as a declaration to others, but as a reminder to yourself that this phase is about construction, not excitement. Typing this word grounds you in patience, consistency, and long-term thinking, the exact mindset that allows compounding to continue uninterrupted. Then type 11 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how this compounding begins protecting your future automatically, reducing risk, stress, and financial fear over time. Phase 12, how stability turns into automatic protection over time. This is the phase most people never recognize while they are inside it, because nothing feels urgent anymore. And urgency is what they were trained to listen for. After compounding quietly establishes itself, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. Your life starts protecting itself without constant effort from you. Not through luck, not through sudden miracles, but through alignment. Here is what automatic protection really looks like. You spot risks earlier without panic. You avoid situations that once drained you. You say no faster without guilt. You choose long-term safety over short-term relief. This is not fear. This is maturity. When stability deepens, chaos loses access. People assume protection comes from having more money. But in reality, protection comes from not needing to prove anything anymore. Most financial losses come from pressure. Pressure to impress. Pressure to recover quickly. Pressure to keep up. Pressure to escape discomfort. When that pressure disappears, losses slow down dramatically. This phase is when bad opportunities stop looking attractive. Empty promises stop sounding convincing. High-risk shortcuts lose their emotional pull. And here's the truth that few talk about. Protection doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives as disinterest. You stop chasing what once distracted you. And because you stop chasing it, it stops hurting you. This is how your future begins to defend itself. You may notice fewer conflicts, cleaner boundaries, less mental noise around money. This is not because you have enough. It's because you know enough. Knowledge paired with patience creates insulation. And insulation is what allows growth to survive storms. This phase also changes how you respond to uncertainty. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. Instead of forcing clarity, you wait. Instead of overcorrecting, you adjust slowly. That slowness is not weakness. It is strategic safety. Here's something important. The world is unpredictable, but predictable behavior inside you creates stability outside you. That's the shield. Not money itself, but disciplined response. As this phase settles, you may feel a strange calm about the future. Not optimism, not excitement, just a quiet confidence that whatever comes, you will handle it better than before. That confidence is earned, and it becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Now, the word for this phase is guard. Comment the word guard, because this phase is about protecting what you are building, not exposing it too early. Typing this word reinforces awareness, restraint, and long-term safety, the qualities that prevent collapse when growth accelerates later. Then, type 12 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how this protection begins opening higher-level opportunities without putting what you've built at risk. Phase 13, when protection creates access without exposure. This is the phase where opportunities begin to appear differently. Not louder, not faster, but safer, because now you're no longer operating from hunger. You are operating from stability, and stability changes what is allowed to reach you. Most people believe opportunities come from visibility, from being seen, from being loud, from constantly announcing progress. But higher-level access works the opposite way. It looks for people who can hold opportunity without damaging it. This is why, after protection is established, access increases quietly. You may notice invitations instead of applications, conversations instead of competitions, trust-based offers instead of transactional ones. Timing that feels strangely right. This is not coincidence. This is filtration. When you stop exposing yourself to unnecessary risk, you become eligible for environments that require discretion, consistency, and reliability. Here's a critical truth. Not all opportunities are meant to be chased. Some are meant to recognize you. But recognition only happens when your energy is steady, when your reactions are predictable, when your values don't shift under pressure. This phase teaches you to wait without anxiety. And waiting without anxiety is a rare skill. Because most people wait while doubting, while rushing mentally, while preparing to settle. You don't. You wait while grounded. This changes everything. Now, opportunities don't feel like lifelines. They feel like extensions. That difference matters. A lifeline creates dependency. An extension creates leverage. You also begin to notice that fewer opportunities feel urgent. Deadlines feel flexible. Pressure disappears from conversations. You're given space to decide. That space is power, and power handled calmly attracts better outcomes. This is the phase where you learn that saying, "not now," can be more valuable than saying yes. That restraint can build more wealth than action. That timing can outperform effort. You're no longer afraid of missing out, because you understand something deeply now. What is meant for stability does not require desperation, and what requires desperation is rarely stable. This is why access begins expanding without exposing what you've built. Your growth is no longer fragile. Your position no longer reactive. Your future no longer rushed. Now, the word for this phase is access. Comment the word access. not as a request, but as recognition that you are learning to receive without risk and choose without fear. Typing this word reinforces patience, discernment, and readiness, the qualities that allow opportunity to arrive safely and stay. Then type 13 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how this access begins aligning people, timing, and resources in your favor, without forcing outcomes or burning energy. Phase 14, when alignment starts moving people, timing, and resources for you. This phase feels almost unreal when you first notice it. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because resistance begins to disappear in places where it used to exhaust you. You're no longer pushing life forward. Life starts arranging itself around your steadiness. Alignment is not magic. It is efficiency created by clarity. At this stage, 3 things begin to synchronize quietly. People, timing, resources, and the key word here is quietly. Nothing crashes into your life. Nothing forces urgency. Nothing demands you prove readiness. Instead, doors open at the speed you can walk through without losing balance. You may notice that the right people appear at the right moment. Not many people, just the necessary ones. Conversations feel easier. Agreements require fewer explanations. Trust forms faster without overpromising. That's alignment. Timing also shifts. You stop arriving too early. You stop arriving too late. Opportunities meet you when your capacity can actually hold them. This is important because timing that arrives before readiness creates stress. Timing that arrives after readiness creates regret. Alignment removes both. Resources behave differently too. Money, tools, information, and support stop appearing randomly. They appear when there is a clear use for them. This is why nothing feels wasted anymore. You don't feel like you're collecting things just in case. You acquire what you need when you need it. That precision is rare, and it happens because you're no longer scattered. Here is a truth most people never hear. Alignment is not about attracting more. It is about eliminating friction. When friction disappears, effort decreases, results stabilize, stress reduces, momentum increases naturally. This is why life begins to feel smoother, even if it's still challenging. Challenges no longer threaten your foundation. They refine it. You also stop explaining your vision to people who don't need to understand it. You conserve energy. You choose silence where noise once lived. And because you stop leaking energy, progress accelerates. This phase teaches you something powerful. You don't need to control outcomes when alignment controls direction. Direction matters more than speed. Direction determines destination. And now, your direction is steady. This is why alignment brings a sense of calm confidence. Not excitement, not arrogance, just certainty. You're no longer guessing. You are responding. Now, the word for this phase is align. Comment the word align, because this phase is about staying centered while life rearranges itself around your stability. Typing this word reinforces focus, clarity, and internal order, the conditions that keep alignment active and uninterrupted. Then type 14 for the next part, because the next phase reveals how alignment begins converting stability into lasting influence, without pressure, performance, or